For Cartier Bresson, photography came down to the decisive moment. He said, "There is a creative fraction of a second when you're taking a picture. Your eye must see a composition or an expression that life itself offers you, and you must know with intuition when to click the camera. That is the moment the photographer is creative," he said. "Oh, the moment. Once you miss it, it is gone forever." So timing is absolutely everything. Timing is added, of course, to preparation. So Cartier-Bresson would choose a place and he would stay in that place and he'd line everything up with his camera and he'd watch and he would wait for things to happen. So that's how he captures a photograph like this one. He's standing at a high vantage point looking down so that he can get these repeated elements of the stairs and the repeated elements of the railings and that sort of curve of the street that echoes the railings and the stairs, and everything is just lining up and it's just waiting for this one thing to make it complete. And then when the man on the bicycle comes by, bang, that's it. And he has to be there and be ready for that perfect moment to take place. So a lot of his photographs are like this, that he's just sort of like waiting for just the right thing to happen. And other times he's out there in the world capturing things when they happen because he's a journalist in addition to making these incredibly poetic images. So this photograph captures people, and in a photograph like this one, you can't really just expect that things are going to happen in just the right way. You find a place in the street, and then you sort of mingle with the people on the street, and you wait for these expressions and these interactions among people. There's movement, there's action, there are lines of sight. There's of course all this wonderful stuff going on in the background too. So he captures a photograph like this one that says something about the street life in Spain at the time that this is taking place, and because of the incredibly brilliant light and the sort of specific qualities of the architecture that you get on the backside of a building here. This isn't the kind of architecture that people were paying a lot of attention to. Okay, well, this is like the backside of a building, but he finds the shapes and forms incredibly interesting. So it's a combination of being in the right place, choosing the right place, and being there at the right time, and noticing the sort of interactions among people that are really going to speak when it all comes together in that decisive moment. There was a book, The Decisive Moment. So he published this book in 1952, and you can see the cover of the book here did not use photography. The cover is a composition by Henri Matisse, one of the great abstract artists of the 20th century. The type isn't type; it's handwritten. So that's the beautiful cover composition, but the photographs all throughout are Cartier-Bresson's photographs. So this was published in 1952. The majority of the photographs in The Decisive Moment, the book, were from that key period of the 1930s where he's out there in the world capturing these incredibly beautiful, compelling, very modern looking compositions that have this sort of poetic resonance, that they seem to say something about more than just this moment when he was standing there. Here's another page spread from The Decisive Moment. Notice how these photographs are presented without context in the book. They're not shown, with captions or explanations of where and when they were taken, although that information is available in the back of the book. He doesn't want that to interrupt our visual experience of the photographs. And by putting these four together, you really see his eye for composition, for really bold, flowing lines in a photograph, for repeated elements, those qualities that just make them compositionally just so bold and powerful as photographs. The context for the photographs is also important because three of these photographs were taken in Spain in the early 1930s, and they reflect this sort of quality that Cartier-Bresson was capturing in the streets of Spain, the energetic optimism and spontaneity of the children in the streets at a time when their lives had really been ravaged by the Spanish Civil War. These photographs are reproduced in a different layout in our textbook, so that it gives a little bit more of the background on how these photographs were taken there. But once they come back in the book, they're shifted back into emphasizing their formal elements again. So Cartier-Bresson was a journalist, so he applied all of these qualities of valuing the decisive moment, of having this marvelous split-second timing as a photographer, and also being incredibly in tune with what's happening with the people and their facial expressions in front of him, and he brings all that to bear in his journalism. So in World War II, he was captured by the Germans. He escaped from a prisoner of war camp multiple times and was captured again, but he survived the war, and photographs that he took during and after the war are some of the most compelling images that we have of World War II. Now, when it comes to the aesthetics of the times, it's important to contrast the aesthetics of street photography and surrealism to a certain aesthetic approach that's associated with fascism and that was very intentionally refined by the Nazis in the 1930s. This is mentioned by Walter Benjamin in the work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, but just as a visual reference, two specific films that were commissioned by Hitler and created by the director and photographer Leni Riefenstahl that demonstrate aesthetics that were very important for the Nazi Party. The monolithic aesthetic is what you see on the left, and the classical aesthetic on the right. So when we're talking about a monolithic aesthetic, the word breaks down into meaning one stone. So monolithic is this visual sense that everything is unified and orderly. Just visualize this enormous rectangular stone that is composed of all of the people just lined up, all in order, everything just precisely organized and unified. So that's the aesthetic of the Triumph of the Will. In Olympia, the film that Leni Riefenstahl made of the 1936 Olympics that were held in Germany, there's the feeling of the monolithic aesthetic is all through Olympia too, but even more strong in Olympia is the sense of the classical aesthetic, which values this beautifully refined and perfected human body. So Olympia is a celebration of the human form in the documentary, and there are many connections made between the Germans that were hosting the Olympics and the classical Greeks, the creators of the Olympics, and the sort of aesthetic of harmony, balance, order, unity, and valuation of the idealized human form that the Greeks so prized.